meeting off. It's 6:30, January 10th. First of all, I'd just like to acknowledge with respect that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen-speaking people, and we are honored to have the opportunity to build strong relationships with the people of the Songhees and Esquimalt nations. And approval of the agenda. If I can get a motion to approve the agenda. Councillor Grove, Councillor Jensen seconds it. All in favor? Unanimous, thank you. I don't have any message, so we'll just public participation. Do we have anyone from the public that wishes to speak? Mr. Aubrey, please.
Didn't know whether or not there was an opportunity to speak here. My wife owns the property at the corner of Souk Road and Veterans Way. And I just saw the landscaping done in the middle of the road. And I am seriously concerned about the safety of your employees by putting grass in at that intersection. It's and that's not just the only area, but that one has really bothered me. And as my wife is a taxpayer, I would like to ask councils in the future to look at other methods in busy intersections like that particular one is, to look at other ways of doing the landscaping where the Colwood employees are not put at risk. That scares me. And as that intersection is going to get built up over the next 2 years, because I know what's going on, there's going to be at least 300 residents in that in the corner there, as well as the C-SPAN and their big rigs. They're putting in 50-footers, 60-footer rigs going in and out of there, plus all the truck and trailers. I really wish the Colwood Council will review and talk to their staff about safety. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Aubrey. We'll absolutely take that into consideration. Thank you. Okay, we'll get on to new business, item 5. And I guess we'll let you take over the agenda now, Jen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Kobayashi. I'll just start tonight. We have a couple of slides that I'll refer to provide a bit of an overview with respect to where we are in the process. So as you will recall, we were last before you seeking endorsement of the approach that we'll be utilizing for the 2023 to 2027 financial plan compilation. In early December, we provided this council with some background and ultimately received approval on the approach that we have well underway. Tonight will be the start of a series of meetings where this council will hear from each of our service delivery teams. These meetings are scheduled over the next 3 weeks. We have populated the agendas and schedules for the next 2 weeks, and then we do have a third week should we require it. The intention here is that you will hear from every service area of this organization. We'll get into it in a couple of moments with respect to what you will hear for each area. But in particular, of course, as we head into budget deliberations, you will hear the financial implications of the existing service delivery for each of these areas. So we really, right now, we are at the onset of 2023 budget deliberations. These meetings we will conclude with direction from this council as to the service area, this level of service delivered, and we'll take that direction and incorporate it into the draft financial plan, which we will be back before this council with in early February. We'll then continue budget deliberations through the month of February, and we will then ultimately look for endorsement on that financial plan, and we will return with the financial plan bylaw. Right now that is scheduled for first 3 readings on March 12th, and following adoption of the financial plan bylaw, we will return with the tax rate bylaw for 2023. And please, at any moment, just raise your hands if you have any question or comment. So tonight we'll be starting with our public works and public works related service areas. We'll have 6 distinct areas that you will hear from our team on. We will return Thursday and we'll continue the conversations with our protective service related areas, as well as administration, corporate services. HR will be deferred until the week of January 17th. And you will hear from our communications and engagement team this Thursday. Next week, we have continue with general government related areas, finance, IT, GIS, HR, as well as engineering. And we will conclude with policing, development services, and community planning. We believe that these 4 meetings are sufficient time to review each of our service areas. That being said, we have held space for tentative meetings the week of January 23rd. So specifically, again, that Tuesday and Thursday evening. The intention there is if we run long on any of the nights this week or next, or if council seeks further information in any area, we will return for that 3rd week. So the intention is that we will provide somewhat consistent presentations for each of our service areas. You will hear an overview of the area. You will hear previous council expectations for each of our service areas. You will see within the documentation the staffing compositions, both what has actualized for these areas as well as what is planned under the current draft service profiles. Each of the service areas, where possible, we have included performance measurements, metrics, and/or key statistics. The teams have compiled and outlined successes and challenges, and you will hear from these teams. They'll articulate on some of these. Service areas priorities. So our team, we were directed under last year's service review, and you will hear updates from the teams on as to what the status is on each of the previously directed priorities. You will also hear from the team what is being proposed for 2023 as a priority. And lastly, you will see the proposed level of service for each area. You can see there's four of those aspects of each of our team's presentations that we ultimately are looking for council endorsement on. So we are looking for feedback from council on the expectations of each service area. Are these as you believe they should be? Do you wish to see changes? Similarly, with the successes and challenges for each of our city's service teams, again, is there anything council wishes to amend in those areas? The priorities, this is council's opportunity to provide feedback to our service delivery team and for us to incorporate that feedback and potential changes to priorities into our work plan. And lastly, we are looking for council's affirmation or direction to change the existing level of service. As you'll recall, when we were before you early last month, these draft budgets, so specifically the draft 23 budget that is before you, it is prepared with the expectation that we will maintain existing service delivery. And in certain areas where we have previously been directed to increase service delivery rather, those budgets reflect that previous direction. As you know, one of the reasons we have the 5-year financial plan is because when that calendar flips to January 1st, we do not interrupt our operations and we continue providing service as been previously directed. And so that, with that in mind, that is what is reflected within these documents and these draft budgets that are before you tonight. Did want to take a moment and provide some context as to where we are currently sitting overall with respect to the city's operating budget. Our current financial plan 22 to 2026, it approved a 6.2% increase for the year 2023. The draft 2023 budget that has been revised for various changes that is before you, overall we are looking at a 6.36% increase. So big picture, high level, the proposed property tax increase is quite similar to what was approved under our previous financial plan. When we look at the breakdown and the primary drivers of this property tax increase, we've got about 3.6% required to support existing service delivery. That's what we're referring to as our base tax increase. You'll hear from us within the specific budgets for each of the city's service areas, what is driving that increase. Overall, we have recently concluded, and we now have new labor contracts in place. When we consider both the salary and the benefit increases under those contracts year over year, 23 to 22, that increase alone is just shy of 6%. As our teams have gone through and refined these budgets, we have not automatically applied inflationary factors. In many instances, we have zero-based these budgets. We have looked to internally reallocate budgets where possible to support cost pressures that we are seeing in certain areas. And so, again, those tactics and those methods that we've utilized for each of our areas overall have caused, some budgets where you would expect to see the labor increase, because that is the primary driver for the financial implications of that service area. We have been able to mitigate that increase. So you're not seeing that 6% overall. So that gets us at just over 3.5% increase. The new police building, you heard some information on that last night. Previous council has heard some information on that. You will hear more as we get into budget deliberations, both next week with our policing service area, but also as we get into discussions on our capital and on our city facility capital budget requirements. But right now, this draft budget does propose that we start to introduce the financial implications of what ultimately will be the debt servicing required for the city's proportionate share of changes to this facility. And so with the introduction of our transfer to reserve, which we'll get into further in budget deliberations, but that alone is just shy of 1.8% tax increase. And then lastly, as you're aware, we annually are proposing an additional 1% property tax transferred to our reserves for purposes of sustainable infrastructure. And so what does a 6.36% increase mean? How does it impact a representative property in Colwood? In recent years, we've defined a representative property as the average single family assessed residential property. So that's the subset that best represents residential homes within the city of Colwood. Last year, that representative property paid approximately $1,900 in taxes directly to Colwood. So for the city of Colwood services directly, that property with a 6.36% increase would be paying approximately another $120. So a couple of numbers to keep in mind as we go through each of the service areas. When we talk about a 1% property tax increase for this budget for this city, that generates approximately $180,000 in funding. So 1% increase generates approximately $180,000. And that 1% on a representative property is approximately $20. And that is just with respect to the city's taxation for the city's direct services. And so with that, that's really my overview and introduction. And we will turn to our first service area, which is that of Public Works.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Public Works, the first of the 6 areas that we'll be discussing this evening. Public Works provides fundamental oversight, management oversight, and operational support to all of our public works related service areas. They specifically provide maintenance services for our buildings and facilities, such as City Hall, Public Works Yard, St. John the Baptist Church, Emery Hall, Lookout Brook Dam, and the facilities surrounding our 2 pump stations. This functional area also provides maintenance and support for our entire fleet. Unique services are also embodied in this area, such as branch drop-off, callwood cleanup, event support, and our garbage collection throughout the city at our various bins is managed through this functional area. As Ms. Hepting had indicated, each of the service areas contains council expectations. These were gifted to administration as part of the process last year. They are reflected here on the left-hand side of the document. And for the public works area, council's expectations, as you can see them, are that our special city programs, such as branch drop-off, be relevant to public demand, that fleet vehicles be maintained to demonstrate climate leadership, identifying and prioritizing zero-emission vehicle options, that customer service, education, and consistent messaging to residents continues to drive the response to service requests. And I failed to mention in my overview, this is the fundamental area that captures all public works service requests and then redirects accordingly. That city facilities be maintained to reduce energy consumption and demonstrate climate leadership. That calls for service be prioritized over scheduled work when the issue represents a potential safety hazard, and that public works continue to develop interdepartmental partnerships to improve staff coordination of services and improve knowledge of callwood infrastructure. These are the expectations that form the foundation of our understanding of what council expects from our public works team, and we're asking council at this juncture to reflect upon those and recommend any possible edits or changes to these expectations.
Certainly open up to council for any comments or changes or questions they want on the expectations. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I think it's important that, at least that I mention, that one of my expectations is that staff will be trained and knowledgeable in the areas that they work in. So that's, I think, very important and very helpful in fulfilling the other mandate.
Thank you, Councillor Day. And Mayor Kobayashi, if it's appropriate, when administration receives edits such as Councillor Day has suggested, we will return with specific wording in a later draft of the document. It's helpful for administration to understand if the table supports the suggested edit, however.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ward.
Yeah, just a, excuse me, relatively minor point, but on the special city programs such as branch drop-off, or particularly branch drop-off, I mean, obviously a well-received program, and we have a riot in our hands if you ever tried to do away with that. But in addition to being relevant to public demand, I think they would just to keep in the back of our minds is to look at effectiveness. And, you know, for example, I believe in the last council's term, a decision was made to double it or increase, and correct me if I'm wrong, but to increase the availability of it or frequency. And I heard a good suggestion, Mr. Mayor, that, you know, perhaps there was an opportunity to look at, you know, odd versus even house addresses, or alphabetize, or, you know, other ways to split the demand or prioritize it, so that we're also being fiscally prudent in regards to what we're offering. So just a thought. I don't know if it's a solution or not. Again, I haven't dug into it, but just something to think about.
Councillor Olson.
I think it was more, sorry. I think it was more just a comment on what you had said, Councillor Ward, was as somebody that utilizes the service all the time, year round, I think there was service added in previous years because there was just so much traffic. Like on drop-off days, there was just tons of traffic. It was backing all the way up Carindale. And so I think that Public Works saw that there was a need to add that extra day at that time. But just to speak to what you had said, I do like the idea of the odd even numbers. I think something like that might be worth looking into.
Thank you. Councillor Jordison.
I just had a question about the attachment, the Colwood cleanup. I should probably know, but is that a once a year thing, twice a year thing? More?
Through the chair. Thank you, Councillor Jordison. That's a once a year event that we host typically over 2 days in the springtime each year.
Okay, and I guess just further to that, I just wanted to ask if our prices are in line, because I'm pretty, like, if we somebody drops off a fridge here, we have to turn around and deal with getting rid of that fridge. So I just wonder, like, how close are we to pricing, like at the place where you would take it, or like that kind of are we ending up spending out of pocket to discard these appliances and things like that?
Thank you through the chair. We'll highlight this when we review the operating budget, but the direct answer is our prices are below typically what you would be paying elsewhere, and the city is subsidizing that through taxation.
Sorry, just further to that, I just wonder if, I just wonder if it would make any difference to increase those prices for the Colwood cleanup. You're giving the residents the opportunity to take it in their own city, in their own neighborhood, not having to go to the other places where you can discard of them. So I just don't know. That might just be something to look at. I don't know what kind of cost improvement that would make or what have you, but just food for thought. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Jordison. Councillor Grove.
Thank you. Through the chair, just speaking to what the possible rewording, Cynthia, Councillor Day mentioned, I would think that something like that would fit. And tied into that, perhaps there's something to do with the training and the ongoing education and upgrading of skills. I saw reference later on, we'll get to it, about the sewer and how there was this need to train on the pump station technologies and so on, so we can make sure, I think, keep some of this work in-house, but make sure everybody's updated. I don't know if that fits into that same category. The other thing I would like to mention is the safety element that was brought up, and I had been represented to me this past week, actually. Someone talked about that. I saw myself, a crew in Langford that was lined up and gardening in the middle of the road. It was pretty wicked. Nobody was slowing down. But anyway, I think the safety element could somehow maybe be tied into that as well, just as an aspect. I'm not sure how that would be done. I like the idea of maybe tying the training with and the safety into that rewording thing that you're talking about. Sorry, that's a bit vague. Hope it helps.
Your worship, if I may.
Please, thank
So
you. Mr.
relative to expectations at this juncture, I have 3 edits captured. One is an expectation around a trained and knowledgeable staff. 2, alter the first expectation relative to efficiency and effectiveness qualification for our unique or special services. And 3, add an expectation relative to safety of our workforce.
Yes, that's what I heard too. Perfect. Great summary. So the only other issue, I guess, is just having another look at the branch drop off, right? Correct. And the data absolutely backs up. I guess I was the one that made the point about scheduling, right? It's we're not seeing an increase, even though we doubled the capacity of one part of last year there. And the cost was pretty significant in actual fact. And I mean, I certainly don't want to take that away. I'd be lynched and run out of this town so quickly, but definitely want to keep it. But you know, I've been in other municipalities that, you know, around the world, and where they offer this, they do this, they do the even odd number type thing, and it seems to work. Now, not everyone plays by the rules, but you know, it's not everyone. So, you know, it works, you know. We don't want to sit there and, you know, you having your check, you know, you even number, you an odd number. You just, hopefully, you know, it works out that most people will play by the rules. So that's the only other thing that, you know, we could look at, because we could essentially have our costs for that branch pickup program. Okay.
Your worship, if I may then,
Please,
so
please, Mr. Ross.
at budget, what I'm hearing is council would like to see options to increase the Colwood cleanup fees.
Yes, please. Yes, thank you. Councillor Day?
Thank you. Just further to that, it's not really so important to me that we increase, well, sorry, I'm mixing apples and oranges. I just realized spring cleanup different than branch drop off. But for branch drop off, one comment that I have had from the public, and I recognize that this is probably a very difficult thing for staff, is that they didn't see very many people being checked for being Colwood residents. And since our costs are significant, I think it's important that we consider if there was an option that we make that easier for staff. And I'm just throwing it out there so that we can think about it. I don't want to be prescriptive, but I just would like to be sure that the costs that all of our citizens are sharing in are for all our citizens and not for other neighbors. Maybe that fits in with how we set up the program for who's coming on what days, sort of thing, might help with that. So I just thought I'd throw it out there.
Thank you very much, Councillor Day. Councillor Grove?
Well, we like to be modern. Maybe we need some face recognition software installed.
And Councillor Jordison.
I just had a question about, excuse me, the fleet telematics to improve GHG reporting and asset management. Is that the live GPS fleet management system? Is that what that software is?
Your worship, if I may.
Please, thank you.
You're a couple of pages ahead. And if I could ask you to hold that question,
Okay.
I was going to tell
we
you
will
that.
absolutely get to that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Jen, please proceed.
If I could just keep going.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Yes.
So
Mr. Earl.
on the next page, we have the staff position history and forecast, and you can see the number of different folks we've had with the various titles in the different positions from 2019 to 2022 actual, and then the plan for 2023. And then on the following page, you will see some performance monitoring and key statistics where we've got iCompass requests for service, we've got work orders, the number of vehicles relative to branch drop off, the number of vehicles relative to Colwood cleanup. And you can see in 20 and 21, relative to COVID, Colwood cleanup did not occur. So 22 was a return to the event. And then we've got a chart. We're beginning to reflect more deeply on our climate emergency and report out on our fleet composition relative to zero emission vehicles and diesel and gasoline consumed. The next page, I'm going to turn it over to our public works team to discuss from their perspective in this area of service delivery, what they saw as successes for the 22 year and challenges and opportunities. And after that point, it would be helpful for administration if council could add to these two lists.
Thank you. So we have a number of successes to celebrate this year, kind of spread over the two kind of main areas that this the Public Works looked after. So essentially, with the feasibility study for the facility in the municipal complex, we were able to, with council's help, kind of map out the future for the yard and for City Hall, and having an understanding of where this property is going and what the most efficient use of it is. In addition to that, we're able to upgrade some of our essential alarm components at City Hall and Public Works. It's something, as we move forward, we hope to improve more and more of that sort of thing. So we're looking to add a fob system on top of that and just add efficiency and also look at the buildings in terms of their usage of hydro, that sort of thing. How can we make these buildings more efficient with simple upgrades? Now, in addition to that, we've implemented a zero emissions vehicle priority kind of purchasing component for our fleet. And looking at our fleet policy from 2020, there was some language about prioritizing lower fuel usage vehicles or zero emissions vehicles. And so we've taken that a step further in the sense that we're actively seeking out zero emissions options across the board, whether it's a heavy duty vehicle, whether it's a passenger vehicle. So this is something that we're looking at and evolving day by day. We have a couple of challenges this year too. So supply chain shortages have definitely been a struggle for us, particularly in terms of procuring vehicles. Sometimes it can take up to 2 years to get a vehicle. So we're trying to change our thinking a little bit in how we look at our ordering, planning ahead, not just ordering something and expecting it to come that year, but looking what are our needs 2 years from now and trying to come to grips with that. Also responding to calls for service. We find, especially in the busiest times of years, we have to set aside time to make sure that we respond to the residents, make sure that we can act accordingly and rectify safety concerns and that sort of thing. So it's about kind of pivoting as we need to throughout the year. And because we support all the public works service areas, this becomes kind of an interdisciplinary approach where regardless of whether it's sewer or parks, we want to be as much of a support as possible. Thank you.
Is there anything that anyone wants can think of adding as far as successes and challenges and opportunity on council? I want to back up just a little bit here, just on the metrics, and I think we've got some pretty solid metrics, Mr. Earl. The one that I'd like to see, if you can, I don't know if we collect data to do this, but I think it's pretty impressive from what I understand is how quickly Public Works responds. And if we can measure that, that would be a great metric to have. I've just heard a lot of good things about it, and I think it's something that you should pound your chest about. And so I think it's a great metric. So, I always look at the time, quality, and cost, right, issues in the metrics. So it's just something I'm throwing out there. I don't know if it's readily available, but I just thought I'd throw that one out because I think that's a success. But I can't say to you, except anecdotally, that I've received many calls saying, you guys are really good. Once we get the ticket number, they're very responsive. So I don't know.
Thank you, Your Worship. We'll look at our system to see if this is an easy or a challenging metric.
Thanks very much, Mr. Earl. Thank you. Please proceed, Mr. Earl.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moving on, the team will now talk about the priorities that Council directed form part of 22, where we're at with those, and potential draft ones for 23. We'll be seeking Council's endorsement or edit of those possible drafts.
There are two key priorities for 2022, and one of them does come back to what Councillor Day mentioned in terms of training and education. It's something that we strive to uphold and encourage for our employees. So one of our goals this year was to implement training for the BC Municipal Safety Association Supervisor Safety Certificate, and have all of our supervisors and additional employees as we could trained in this program. And it covers a number of areas, whether it's looking at job site safety, looking at regulatory requirements around safety inspections, and also about things like presenting topics to the crew on safety and that sort of thing. So it covers a number of areas, and it covers all of our service areas throughout Public Works. In addition to that, of course, the facility feasibility study, mapping out the future of the Public Works yard, creating that guide for the future. So both of these we were able to complete in 2022. Our draft 2023 priorities are continuing policy creation, looking at across the service levels, whether it's sidewalks, snow and ice, storm, sanitary, sewer. We want to make sure that we're creating policies that reflect what we're doing, but also reflect where the city needs to go in terms of addressing new assets as they come online. We also want to create a comprehensive plan for fleet electrification, kind of update our fleet policy. Basically including that zero emissions vehicle integration component and mapping out our charging infrastructure. As we get more zero emissions vehicles, we're going to need to provide improved charging infrastructure. So that's something that we need to get a handle on, and the facility feasibility study will help with that too in terms of placement and planning. And then finally to implement the fleet telematics, and telematics is going to be critical for our GHG reduction because it will give us those kind of metrics that we can use to improve fuel economy, maintain our vehicles better, and also track for service delivery too. So in terms of snow and ice, we know when a plow went down a specific street and we have all that information at our fingertips. And then also taking that zero emissions priority purchasing to our small equipment, looking at our weed eaters and our mowers and making sure that wherever there's an available technology that makes sense for us to use, that we're implementing that as much as possible. So we're going to continue to research and integrate that wherever we can. Thank you.
Councillor Day.
So when you're working on 2023, I think something that would be good to have in our annual report would be the training that you have on staff. So, you know, if you have plant specialists or, you know, sewer specialists or, you know, whatever training you're attaining and acquiring, put that on a little brag sheet for the city to be able to talk you up.
Councillor Jordison.
Just back to the fleet telematics. I just wanted to ask at the end there, it's about the asset management. I'm wondering if there's going to need, if you're going to need any kind of software purchase or whatnot to do the asset management.
Thank you. Yeah, so a lot of the telematics software that we've been looking at would have a portion of that built in for the maintenance required, that sort of thing, or at least they have a software add-in that we can put in there too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just one last question here for you. As far as our, you know, our priority to get down to zero emissions with our small equipment, do you have a matrix that sort of we could sort of say with 40% of our small equipment is now electrified, or 30%, or 10%, or do you keep track of that at all?
Unfortunately, I don't have a percentage or a matrix yet, but I think that's exactly where we want to go. We want to be able to show that year-over-year projection. So
yeah, that would be a great for our environmental metrics. So thank you. Oh, sir. Councillor Ward.
Just more for Mr. Earl. I think when we talk about metrics and tracking, maybe skipping a meeting ahead when we talk about website redesign and things like that. But I think there's an opportunity to consider a dashboard that, you know, if not necessarily updating in real time, certainly would include many of these metrics so that the public can view. For example, if you're closing tickets on work orders and things, you can see, you know, in the month how many are happening. You know, you can have the GHG reporting on there, and I think, you know, in other facets of, you know, across the you know, across the organization, if you will, you know, what's relevant could be displayed in, well, you know, in a very easy to interpret way and very upfront in a manner that, as we said, you know, shows the hard work that everyone's doing in a way that the public can get access to. And, you know, that could be everything from snow removal, you know, how many streets cleared in the day, to parks work. You know, the sky's the limit, I think, in terms of, you know, what we can put out there to show people that they're getting value for their dollar.
Thank you. We'll capture that.
Councillor Grove?
Yeah, thank you. And the safety element that I was talking about earlier, I know it's everybody's thinking, I believe, about cars whizzing past, but one thing that was on my mind is the fact that the electrification of the small appliances, equipment leads to the fact that the workers aren't working in a cloud of exhaust fumes all day long. And that to me is a major priority, because I think it gets underviewed. I don't think it should be, I think, part of a safety regimen. But it tends to not be in society. We kind of accept vehicle exhaust as kind of, it's okay, let's breathe it. So that's important for me. So I think it's good. And you've captured that here with the safety certification levels. That wasn't really what I was thinking about. It was more that workplace around and the electrification thing that covers it. So I would support that aspect a great deal on that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Earl, over to you. Or no.
Thank you. So with that, we'll skip just before we return to the proposed service level. I'd like to walk us through the first appendix, which is the operating budget for this service area. So on the next page 6. I'll just take a minute. Each area that has dedicated funding for that area, we do our best to capture that within the specific service area. That being said, 9 times out of 10, there are additional expenditures associated with, for example, facility rentals. We have teams outside of our public works delivery team that support city facilities. So that being said, it's not a perfect match of funding with expenditures on each of the individualized operating budgets for a given area. But high level, we will recognize funding outside of general taxation. I'll then walk us through the core expenses to support existing service delivery. We'll then highlight if there's any expenditures proposed to support increased service delivery. And then you'll see a line taxation required. That is simply the difference between the core expense budget and the funding for that respective year. In recent years, we've added a metric, taxation per resident. So each of the operating budgets, we utilize the annual provincial population estimates. And both in recent years and in our near-term projection, we're seeing a 2.5% increase in our population here at Colwood. And so we've applied an increase factor of 2.5%. And then that brings us to taxation per resident. So that is simply a piece of information to add context as you consider both what the approved budget was for the prior year, what we are projecting will actualize for 2022, and then the approved budget for 2023. And then the column highlighted in blue, this is the updated operating budget for 2023. And we then show the change between what council approved for 2023 and what is being proposed for 2023. And that brings us to the bottom line of each operating budget summary. We'll look at the increase in taxation required. So overall for the public works operating area, we're seeing an increase of $50,000 to support this service area, or 4%. And so with that, I'll just walk us through. So as you heard earlier tonight, this team oversees facilities maintenance, and we do generate some revenue with city facilities. When I refer to city facilities, I'm talking about City Hall, I'm talking about the Public Works Yard, I'm talking about St. John's Church and Emery Hall, and the city also owns a facility located at 170 Goldfinch, which is a modular building located on a piece of property right near the waterfront off Ocean Boulevard. We do collect rental income for the use of St. John's Church and Emery Hall. That income provides some financial support for the associated maintenance expenses with those facilities. And at year end, under bylaw, ultimately any net income generated, any excess of the fees over the direct costs of those two facilities, we then transfer into a reserve specific for the purposes of St. John's Church and Emery Hall. 170 Goldfinch, We previously did receive lease revenue for that facility. And under previous council direction, that lease revenue did fund a transfer to our parks reserve. It was to the tune of approximately $20,000 a year. The updated draft budget reflects that that lease has been terminated, and council will hear from administration later this year with respect to options for that facility. The Colwood cleanup event. So this was touched on earlier this evening. The fees associated with the Colwood cleanup event have not increased in recent years. Off top of mind, I cannot recall when they last did increase. We've had conversations with every budget deliberation that I can recall. Currently, the fees do not directly fund the direct costs associated with hosting this event. Last year, council gave direction that we were to utilize. We did have some grant funding available, and so we utilized that grant funding to ensure that there was no taxation impact to reinstating that event for 22. It had been off for a couple of years with the pandemic. This budget before you assumes that the fees will not change. If we wanted to ensure full cost recovery of the direct costs associated with this event, these fees would more or less need to at least double. So we've included the fee schedule in Appendix 2. With council direction, we can return with options as to what those fees could look like. But just to know that they would need to more or less double to provide direct support for that event. And I will pause. I do see Councillor Jansen with a question.
Councillor Jansen?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Let me see if I can help a bit. Jen, I tried this last year and I came up a little short, shall we say. When we didn't have the cleanup routine for a couple, 3 years there during the COVID apocalypse, not one person emailed me. So I pitched last year, maybe it was time that this has gone the way of the dodo. And I'm telling you that as a family, we go to Parkland Landfill, which is a awesome facility, like once a month. People aren't sitting on their freezer for a year waiting for this day to bring it down here to dump it on us for 20 bucks. You can drive it out to Heartland Landfill and guess what? It costs you nothing to recycle a large appliance. So there are other robust methods to get rid of stuff here. And I believe our focus should be on the branch and leaf drop off. So I'm going to propose a motion that we terminate this. I see the costs as not only that just going up exponentially, and I don't think that the rest of the community wants to subsidize 500 people that want to bring their junk down there when there's all sorts of ways to get rid of it throughout the year, not just this one day. I've never heard of a person in this community stockpiling their junk to wait for this day to bring it down and give it to us, or at least no one that's ever contacted me. So that's my proposal or my motion is that we get rid of the, what do we call it? The junk day? The spring cleanup. That sounds way better. That's my motion. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. We won't be doing this until the next round, right? Where we look at cutting things. Mr. Earl, is this more for information?
The purpose of service review is for council to review the programs and services that we deliver and direct administration on the level of those services.
Okay.
It is not inappropriate for an individual at this table to suggest change. What I did hear early on in the conversation was that at budget, you will at a minimum like to see options relative to those fees. However, that said, if a motion were to come forward this evening and be successful that this event not occur, we won't take that previous action.
Okay, so we can save some time then. Okay, is there anyone that would like to second? Okay, Councillor Olsen. Oh, so I'm going to come back to the motion. I'm just going to continue the discussion on the presentation. Councillor Day.
So I'm feeling that the motion might be a little early because having been around here for quite some time now, spring cleanup has been kicked around many, many times as to its benefits and its weaknesses. As I see it, the weakness is that it's not something we do all the time. So it does take more effort and probably cost us more than the businesses that have set themselves up to do that. And when you take your free freezer or large appliance to Heartland Landfill, you also have to pay for your gas all the way to Heartland Landfill, which is not great for the climate either. So there are some benefits to having a close to home option. And what I noticed this year, and one of the arguments for holding spring cleanup before, is the amount of material that's being dumped on the side of our road. So when people dump their junk on the side of the road, we are all subsidizing cleaning up that person's garbage. So I just want to be sure that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I'm not terribly attached to spring cleanup, but I really would like to do a proper evaluation because earlier this year, and in fact, just in December, there was a number of items dropped on Wishart Road: couch cushions, coffee table with a broken top. And they were all kind of stacked in the area where the tree fell down on Wishart Road. And they have appeared a few times. And I'm imagining that Public Works very nicely came along and cleaned up that mess for the citizens and got not one penny for doing it. I mean, they did it at their own time when it fit their schedule. That's all fine. But I don't want to end up, thinking that we're saving money by not having the spring cleanup. Meanwhile, we're going to end up picking up, a ton of junk off the sides of the roads. I think I saw some more stuff on VMP as well. And I'm sure you can tell me all about the crazy things that you find on the sides of the road. But I think I just would like to look at it as a whole picture rather than just, yeah, you can drop your stuff off and I haven't utilized spring cleanup. It's not my jam, but there are people who might need it, and it may make a difference to recovering some costs for what we're picking up regardless. So I guess that's coming around to asking if staff would like to give us some feedback on what they've noticed. Did the spring cleanup make a dent? Did it, I would imagine that in people's minds, being as we haven't done it for a while, having the spring cleanup first time in quite a while, maybe it was different.
Please, Rob, through the chair. 2 years that we did not have spring cleanup, we monitored the junk pickup on the side of the road. It didn't proportionally increase. The teams basically report back. It's kind of like on moving day is when we find that you'll find piece of furniture. I can't say that a significant increase in it. I do know the history of it, and the history has changed in the availability of services in the area. So when it first was incorporated, I don't believe there wasn't an Alpine over in Langford. You had the option of driving to Heartland. Well, now you can go to Alpine. There's actually a couple of companies out there now that come pick it up at your house. And those things all sort of transpired. It was all part of the discussion last year. I'm just bringing that forward as information.
Councillor Jordison.
I just wanted to weigh in on this, and I originally, when I was suggesting that prices be increased, I didn't want this to be another example of council remuneration and not keeping up with that, and then all of a sudden increasing it so drastically that it upsets people. So I just felt that we should keep up with it. But I actually really like Councillor Jensen's proposal to be rid of it because it sounds costly. And I think people that dump their stuff on the side of the road are gonna dump their stuff on the side of the road, whether there's an option to bring it here or not. So that just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Councillor Ward.
Thank you. I would say our resident expert who knows the history stole my thunder a bit, because I was going to say, I think, we've seen an evolution in terms of the ability to get rid of some of this material, different options that are available, and going back to talk about subsidizing people, as the makeup of our community changes, essentially folks, the majority of people in higher density homes or multifamily homes are essentially subsidizing the legacy larger single family homeowners, not only with this program, but to some extent with the branch drop off. Don't get me wrong, I don't want to get rid of the branch drop off, but that's where the idea, I picked up on from the mayor with the alternating numbers and things became a more effective approach. But when it comes to this, I initially was thinking full cost recovery. Even Jen, when you said double, that didn't faze me. I think it's a fee for service. And if you want to take advantage of that and be close to home and not go to Alpine or frequent somewhere else, fine, but you should pay for it. We shouldn't be subsidizing that. But ultimately, I think I'd be prepared to get on board with Councillor Jansen's motion and just to do away with it altogether.
Okay, well, we do have a motion and a seconder. We had some discussion on it. Any other discussion? Any other points? If not, I will call the question then. All those in favor of the motion? Well, you actually got a unanimous vote here, Councillor Jensen.
It's a little purple ribbon. It's had a unanimous vote.
Okay, Mr. Whose turn? Oh, Jen.
Keeping you on your toes tonight. Just a couple of final comments. Recent years, we have enhanced cleaning of city facilities utilizing COVID Safe Restart Grant. Draft budget proposes that we revert back to pre-pandemic levels. So that has been reflected and updated in this budget. Overall, one thing I did want to draw council's attention to, you will notice the projected spend in this area is just over $1.5 million. You'll notice that the proposed budget is just over $1.3 million. I need to preface, the rest of the conversations tonight. The public works service areas are ones that have, been refined in recent years. The 2022 operating budgets were the first in which we attempted to allocate staffing resources to each area. And as we continue to refine our service delivery, that refinement is reflected in these budgets. And so in particular, this budget previously housed kind of all, the majority of our fleet and equipment related labor. As we move forward into 23, we are looking to cost that resource out with each of the respective service areas. So that's the primary reason that you see the drop in the operating budget as you do before you. But with that, that really concludes the overview of the operating budget. And perhaps if we just jump back to page 5, the proposed service levels.
So, Your Worship, we've got 2 particular service levels in Public Works, and based on the decision that was just crystallized in a motion, Council is decreasing the level of service in Public Works, and so this bar would move from maintain to decrease, and so I'm looking for Council's affirmation of that.
We do that through motion, correct?
Yes.
Can I get a motion for that, please? Councillor Day, Councillor Grove seconds it, and call the question. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you.
And then next, we have a specific sub-service level area for branch drop-off, as Council demonstrated in the last couple of years a desire to be precise with their direction to administration on branch drop-off. We're recommending a maintained level of service.
Councillor Ward.
point of reference here. So are we limited to these three options as finite? Because, you know, I certainly would say in the previous example, technically it is a decrease if you remove that service. In this case, I think what I'm arguing for personally on the branch drop off is increased efficiency. I don't view that as a decrease in service levels. I view it as a modification. Semantics, maybe you see it differently, but I'm curious in frankly, the optics of it, right? If you move to an odd numbered address method, for example, is that a decrease in service by definition?
It certainly, I think semantics are at play. If the service level offering to an individual home with either an even or an odd number decreases in the frequency in which they can come to the city hall to take advantage of branch drop off, that could be looked at as a decrease in level of service. When we doubled the number of branch drop off days as a result of the long lines and our desire to respect separation during the times of COVID, we substantially dropped the lines, but not the tons of material that we received did not substantively change. And so we provided a greater level of service, but from an efficacy perspective, the tonnage of branches that were removed from Colwood and repurposed into an organics composting system, from an efficacy perspective, we did not make a gain, but from a level of service, we offered a greater level of service. And so administration would take council's direction if council is seeking to improve the financial efficiency of branch drop off by reducing the number of events, and we're absolutely happy to come back with those options. Administration would interpret a reduction in the number of events for a particular homeowner as a changed or diminished level of service.
Yeah, I can appreciate that, Mr. Earl. I think from my perspective, when I look at the number of vehicles received, you know, essentially remaining static, you know, I would agree with you, obviously, that, you know, technically you are decreasing on a per household example, but I think for me, the important piece would be how it's communicated, and I'm probably getting a step ahead, but, you know, I would want to emphasize this information, again, going back to that dashboard, people, that nothing's really changing. The same number of people will be showing up. You're just going to have your designated turn to do it. But anyway, I'll leave it at that. I think you explained it well. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, semantics. That's what I was getting caught up on too, because we, and, you know, that was the first thing that I noticed, and I was really happy when I read the report, because I looked at the number of the vehicles that were showing up, and basically it was flatlined over the last few years here. In essence, we had that one high year in the COVID year, and so I mean, it doesn't show tonnage. But thank you for answering that other part of it, because that's what I was looking at. And like I said, sometimes it's you can't cure things through scheduling, right? That's all. And will it fix it? I'm not sure. But you know, for the amount of money that was that we approved on it, you know, we're looking for every little thing that we can. We're trying to, you know, I'm trying to. I just foresee some bad things happening this year, you know, in the world, and wherever I can squeeze something without hurting service, you know, I'm going to look at doing this. And if, you know, as long as I'm not going to do anything that is, you know, absolutely not recommended by staff. And I really trust the staff to come back on this one right now to tell me, you know, this is doable or it's not doable. You know, this is just a perspective that I sit in my little ivory tower and I say, yeah, just try alternate day, you know, alternate weeks, you know, odd numbers, even numbers, because the problem that we were trying to solve at the time by doubling, you know, the number of weekends that we were doing the branch drop-offs was basically to get rid of the problem of the long lineups. So the problem we're trying to solve. So, and as I stated way back then, I just said, well, maybe let's try. Can we not try the alternate, you know, odd numbers this weekend, even numbers the following weekend, odd numbers the following week, you know, alternated. I wasn't sure. And I threw the idea out. I got soundly walloped. And, but you know, it's still costing us twice as much. And you know, I guess I look at it from the point of view that, you know, I'm trying to squeeze blood out of a stone right now, wherever I can. And so I'm keeping that in mind. I just look at some easy low hanging fruit. And if this is not a low hanging fruit, and you tell me that it's not a good idea, then I'll believe you, because I don't know.
Your worship, if I may, if council is interested in seeing options at budget time for a change in how we deliver branch drop-off with a view towards improving the financial performance of branch drop-off in terms of its cost, we are happy to provide those.
Councillor Day?
Thank you. I guess this is a difficult one because this is one of those benefits of COVID. Having branch drop off more often has been very much appreciated in the neighborhoods where I've talked to people, that it has worked a lot better for people. I mean, yard work, of course, I'm sure I don't have to tell you, but it's very weather dependent. And being able to drop off your material when you're finished a project is very much appreciated. And it's been, I think it has made life much easier for residents, kind of the same way working from home has become something that some employers have wanted to get away from, but found that it was very much loved. So I'm interested in increasing our efficiency, but I'm also really desirous of keeping. This is one of those services that Colwood is very proud of. Our residents are proud that the City Hall is doing branch drop-off. They're really proud of the way that we clear the roads in the wintertime. It's very appreciated. And I don't think the cost savings of going back to only twice a month in the summer months would be as worthwhile as the good feelings in the community from being able to do things more conveniently and more easily. Everyone struggles in their life, whether you're in a small property or a large property, if you have a family or don't have kids anymore or don't have them at all. Everybody is trying to manage the cost of living going up, the work-life balance. And so the benefit, I think, should not be forgotten of being able to have convenience to make lives easier in Colwood. It's one of the perks of living in Colwood and having this setup that we have. So I am supportive of being efficient, and I'm not too interested in taking away something that's appreciated by the community. So I'm willing to try something out. I'm willing to see how well it's received. But if we get pushback that people aren't finding it comfortable to come again, whatever we devise to make it more efficient, I would like to be clear that I want to keep the options open to make sure that it works for people, because that's the bottom line. If we have our branch drop off, we get way less dumping of stuff at the end of the roads, at the end of the dead ends, on the boulevards. All of those places are better and cleaner because we do this. So I'm just trying to be really upfront with you all that I'm I'm supportive of finding our most efficient and effective way of doing it, but I also want it to be convenient for our citizens.
Thank you very much, Councillor Day. Councillor Jensen?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be brief. This is a Cadillac service that we provide, and there's a million different ways that we could dice this up, and I'd love to hear some feedback from staff. But in previous budget year, we talked about adjusting the work hours. Why does it need to go to 4 o'clock? If people are up in the morning doing their thing and get rid of it by lunch, maybe we're finished by 2. I don't know. As far as the odd weekends, I'm struggling a bit. Like the same number of staff have to be here to receive those people from that address. And presumably there'll be less people coming. So I don't understand sort of where we would find a savings in there or an efficiency for that matter. And I've been down here recently and I mean, you don't wait. There's no massive lineup. So maybe some hour reduction, but the staff are there for a minimum time period anyways. It doesn't matter. Like you can't send them home early or whatever. So finding that right spot. The other option that I've heard over the years is, do we need it in December and January when things aren't growing? I mean, I haven't taken anything down here in a number of weeks. I mean, I guess I can stockpile for a month and then bring it down. I'm not sure, but so there's storms. I gotcha. You could make a pile and bring it down in March. So just some ideas. So I take your point, Mr. Mickler, but yeah, thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Grove.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would support a decrease in the branch drop-off level of service simply because we're in tight times. It'd be great to be able to shave 50 grand off the cost. We're at 156. If we could take off $50,000, be awesome. And I think we'd be good. There's ways to do it. We might not reach that, but I would like to see staff explore the reduction in the cost, the possibilities that you had mentioned. I use the branch drop off. My neighbors use it. I see a lot of us get together. 2 of us will get together and drive one load on a truck because it's efficient. I think if we become more, the COVID lineups have long gone. In my experience, the last while, there hasn't been any. And it's just a fabulous service, and I think it's good. The only other option around the expediency of the finance side of it would be speaking to Ian, Councillor Ward's comment about multi-unit residential buildings that people don't have gardens, they don't use the services, to put a small fee onto the service. I'm not sure that's a great idea because then you got to collect the money and all that, but I think 156,000 is a big number. So if we could shave off a third, that'd be awesome.
So,
So I see, yeah.
Thank you. I wanted to summarize. Go ahead, Councillor.
Oh, sorry, I'll let you
I'll
summarize
I'll let you have,
momentarily, but
your last kick at the can.
well, you know, just speaking to what Councillor Grove said, I mean, the line item in the budget is what really stands out to me. We've got 146K to maintain our fleet and equipment, and more than that, 156K to do this Cadillac service, as you call it. And you know, I think that's a good way to explain it, and it's well received. People love it. They see it as a value for their tax dollar. But at some point, whether it's this council or a council in future, there will have to be a choice. People either have to pay for it, either upfront as a service fee, or if they want it included in they view as value for their taxes are going to go up. And I think as somebody who has committed to try to be fiscally responsible and keep tax increases to a minimum, you know, we also have people clamoring for sidewalks and for sewer and other infrastructure. And yet you mentioned doing anything with branch drop off, and well, it's the holy grail. You can't touch that. So, you know, it's one of the great juxtapositions of politics, right? Once you give somebody a cookie, you can't take it away. But, you know, at the end of the day, I think I would go back to what I said originally is, you know, I don't know if it's a motion, but certainly I would like to see, I'm really more curious about staff's perspective because of the longevity and the history and the understanding of the program. They're the ones who deal with it on the ground. It's the people on the front lines who typically have the most insight. So maybe it's not today, but certainly to go away and examine, okay, what do we think would be the most efficient thing to do? And if it's changed nothing, it's changed nothing. But, you know, I would certainly welcome the the recommendations or options from staff at a future point in time when we can say, or at that point, make a decision on whether or not there's some savings to be gained here.
Thank you very much. So I was going to just ask, can we just give you direction right now, or you want a motion on this then? To what you said, come back with the options for us. This discussion isn't finished yet, obviously, but so.
Your worship, given what administration has heard this evening, be my recommendation that for the branch drop-off service level, that this be blanked out, that we bring back options at budget. And once council makes a determination based on those budget options, we would crystallize whether or not we're maintaining or decreasing or potentially increasing
Right.
this
Okay.
level of service.
So do you need a motion, or is this
No,
direction?
we will treat this as undetermined.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll move on, please.
Your worship, may I move to parks?
Please.
So the Parks, Trails and Recreation area, Colwood maintains 25 parks and green spaces, including destination playgrounds, neighborhood commons. Services range from weekly playground maintenance and inspection to manicured lawn and garden care, as well as washroom maintenance, irrigation, and tree management. Among the location managed, we have community parks, which are provided a high frequency maintenance, including playgrounds at locations such as Herm Williams and Colwood Creek Park. We have neighborhood parks and green spaces that receive moderate frequency, such as Terrahue and Nellie Peace, and linear and undeveloped parks, which are typically low frequencies, including the seasonally maintained Sue Mar and Elizabeth Ann parks. And then there are a few unique historic assets, such as St. John's Historic Church and the Colwood Waterfront at Lagoon. Beyond parks, we have trails. In addition to our parks and green spaces, over 44 trails providing 10 kilometers of developed walkways through the city. These trails and neighborhood accesses feature gravel paths as well as concrete and asphalt walkways. Stairs and bridges are a significant part of this network, with 400 plus meters of stairs, both wooden and concrete, and 7 pedestrian bridges. The stewardship of our trees and natural areas lining these footpaths is a primary concern for city employees. Tree safety and cleanup of windstorm debris are as important as trail surface maintenance in the service of these areas. Natural parks with trail amenities vary significantly in size, from large destination parks such as Havenwood or Latoria Creek to local walkways such as Afriston and Matilda Parks. Council's expectations for parks, trails, and recreation, a high standard of landscaping and safety be upheld at parks, trails, and playgrounds. That beautification of green spaces through plantings be a priority. That continuous improvements for accessibility be implemented to increase all residents' enjoyment of parks, including connectivity between trails and other infrastructure and attractions. That public stewardship partnerships and engagement be encouraged throughout the city. That removal of invasive species be prioritized in natural areas. That urban forests are seen as an asset and managed accordingly. That native plant species are used where appropriate, and that staff identify and sign the percentage of parks and trails that are accessible. These are your expectations relative to parks, trails, and recreation, and administration are seeking any edits or additions.
Any edits, additions, deletions from council? Yeah. The only thing I have to ask, and I don't know if this is the right place to bring it up, and this goes along with what was brought up by a citizen this evening, Mr. Aubrey, and that had to do with it's our street landscaping. And I guess my question is, I'm always concerned for the safety of our public works people that are working, on the streets on the islands there, especially in Royal Bay is another area. And to me, I mean, it's all beautiful in there. I mean, what we've done there in the park, Meadow Park, is just phenomenal. It's just one of the most beautiful parks that I can walk in right now. But
Your worship, if I may.
yes.
You're a few pages ahead.
Oh,
Our Boulevards section is
so
the
that's
area
Boulevards, that's
where
right. It is Boulevards, you're right, so sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself, I'm happy. Please proceed, there's no other comments here, thank you.
Thank you. On the second page, we have 2021 through 2024 plus staff complement. We add an additional column to the staff chart where there's a known change coming. And so that's why you see in this particular column 23 and 24. Performance metrics, we've got a number of parks and trails maintained, hectares of parkland managed, kilometers of trail maintained, square kilometers of urban forest maintained, acres of land reclaimed from invasive species, washroom buildings maintained, portable washroom maintained, bridges, and meters of stair infrastructure maintained. Are there additional metrics that council wishes us to distill?
Don't see anything, Mr. Earl, please proceed. Oh, Councilor Day, sorry.
Thank you. In your measures and statistics, I didn't see the amount of accessible trail, which is in the goals from council to do continuous improvement for accessibility to increase all residents' enjoyment, including connectivity. And I did see that coming up in our planning with Havenwood and Colwood Creek, but I just think we need to add it into our measurements.
Thank you.
And just one other, again, it's a stat. I don't know if you maintain this stat right now. It's, you know, I'm always for trying to keep the parks as beautiful as possible. And I know over the, you know, in the previous council, we have increased the parks maintenance. And yet, is there a metric that, you know, is it by customer complaints, you know? Is there something that shows that we're providing the value back now? So we can defend it right now. Like if we wanted to say, hey, we wanted to increase this. So do you track complaints on our parks maintenance at all? Is it something a performance metric? Do you think that may be valuable or not valuable?
Thank you for the question, Mayor Kobayashi. We do track all complaints. We have internal, we used to use iCompass, now we use Tempest. So all those come through and are tracked. As far as metrics for, we are continuing to do our best to get metrics for parks using, you know, such things as yardstick, where we use comparison metrics with other municipalities, or so that we're able to better show when we come to service review. And I think this is an ongoing thing that we've been doing for the last few years, is to have that type of metric where we can show, you know, kilometers of trail, you know, what square 10 square meters of trail cost, you know, to maintain and that sort of thing. But we are continuing to work on those metrics.
Okay.
Yeah,
and do you have a goal? So, you know, where you think you might have these, you can at least propose them to be implemented by?
My goal would be to have them now, but at least for, you know, the next round, we'll be better. We'll do better in the next round as well, as far as metrics are concerned.
Okay,
I think every year we've gotten better at showing our metrics and that sort of thing.
Okay, thanks, Gord.
Your worship, if I may, I think
Sorry.
in the area of metrics from a financial efficiency or effectiveness perspective, administration are actively working to improve our systems to be able to report such metrics in documents such as these. From a citizen satisfaction perspective, the last citizen satisfaction survey that Colwood did was 2018. There is one on deck that will be complete and gifted back to this council in advance of strategic planning. Our citizen satisfaction survey, which is a statistically defendable product, will ask value-based questions about the community's happiness with and importance of services like the parks you're describing. However, the frequency of that ask is unlikely to be any greater than every second year. And so I'm not sure if that would meet your expectations in terms of
It's a
answering that
great
question.
start. It's a great start. So I'm happy. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask for the accessible trails. I was very involved when we put in Promenade Park. And that was the first location where we were able to obtain crushed fines. It's the dust from crushing rocks, which when compacted is an extremely stable surface that is porous. And so we did use that in Promenade Park. And there's a few grade issues in that park that make it only for certain accessible users, I guess you would say. There's some challenging terrain, but quite a few people could manage it, say with a power chair or something. But when one of those washouts occurred, it was repaired with like road base, which I'm sure was what was available at the time. And it never has gone back to the crushed fines. So it just brought up the question for me, is that a surface that we can still install? Or because it makes a huge difference having a hard surface so that if you're in a wheelchair and it's a manual chair, your wheels get stuck in anything that isn't very hard packed. So I just wanted to inquire if that's something that we could add into our metrics for our accessible trails somehow about the type of surface, because there's been a lot of accessibility improvements throughout the West Shore as a result of the work that we did with the user-friendly trail guide. And in some instances, they got all the metrics right, except for the surface was too soft, and people in wheelchairs just really get stuck, and you have to have somebody really strong to help you get out of that. So I'm just trying to point out that there was a really good solution that we got in one of our parks, and then maybe we kind of lost track of it over time with changes to availability of materials. And it would be really great to get that back, because to this day, that whether we had people with crutches or people with wheelchairs, power walkers, they all were better on that firm surface. Thanks.
Councillor Grove, and then on deck, Councillor Jordison.
Thank you, Chair. I would just have a quick question of how do you delineate between parkland managed and urban forest? The other one is, I assume urban forest, none of that is in Royal Roads property. Like the difference between those two, I'm just curious. And you have got 2 kilometers squared if urban forest maintained, is that right? This chart? Not quite sure I understand that KM2.
I think the chart articulates 12 plus kilometers of 12 plus square kilometers of urban forest.
Okay, thanks. So, and then above that, hectares of parkland managed. So would like to hear how you decide whether it's forest or parkland managed parkland. At what point is the parkland managed? Put a trail through the forest, does it become a managed park?
Thank you, Councillor Grove, through the chair. That's a great question. I think I will have to think about that one a little bit. Yeah, so
My instinct is that parkland covers it all. And there are subsets within parkland, such as urban forest.
Okay, that sort of makes sense, yeah.
So
88,
90 hectares is
10. It's about 180 acres.
square.
We will have a Lanark, the consultant that you experienced last night, provide the specific answer, who gifted us these.
It's a lot of property. It's cool. I'm just interested in the, thanks.
Councillor Jordison.
I just wondered if, this is something that I'd be interested in, like if we can get metrics on maybe how many trees are planted or how much disease is removed from parks or that sort of thing. I don't know, it might be something public wants to know, how many trees are being replaced in parks and that sort of thing. Is that something that you do?
Through the chair, this will be part of the urban forest strategy. We'll get a lot more information on urban forest management, and as far as disease is concerned, there isn't a lot of disease managed, say like in Havenwood Forest or Havenwood Park, where we have a lot of the laminated root rot and that sort of thing. That's something that's just managed through the tree itself. We let the tree, there's not a lot we can do for that, and it is quite prevalent everywhere in the forest. Whereas like a boulevard tree, where we are able to manage pests and disease that way. But that is definitely some metrics that will come with our urban forest strategy.
So just say in a park like Havenwood, are people regularly planting new growth?
Yes, we do. Yeah, the Friends of Havenwood have done an amazing amount of work in there with not just invasive species removal, but with reforestation as well, and restoration, as well as the green team and our own parks team does a fair amount of tree planting as well.
Okay, thank you.
Just a quick question, Edward. Do we get monies from the 2TBT program, 2 billion trees at the federal program? Do you know of that?
I am familiar with that program. We looked into it. There's to participate, the minimum table stakes, so you have to plant 10,000 trees annually.
Oh. Give it to all the schools. Okay, thank you. No, I just was wondering.
We do have several grants out right now, one for Havenwood and one for Colwood Creek for tree planting
Okay,
and restoration.
thank you. Yeah. Please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Will move to the team will now describe some for 2022, their successes and challenges and opportunities. And again, if council is interested in adding from your perspectives, what you saw as successes in parks, trails and recreation, and or what you see as challenges.
For successes for the parks and trails team this year, overall, we had a great year. We felt we had a really good year this year. Some of the highlights are our transition to a 7-day operation, where we were able to give better service for the weekends and not, overtime call outs, but actually be out there on Saturday and Sunday morning doing the washrooms, doing the garbage, as well as branch drop off. We were able to implement a new infrastructure park and park bench and city bench and garbage can bin standard, so that we will now see one standard throughout Colwood and not 3 or 4 different types of benches, 3 or 4 different types of garbage cans, as well as incorporate some recycling garbage cans into the mix as well. So we're not just getting rid of just garbage. We did enhance our beautification in all our parks. Herm Williams got some beautification, Brittany Park, Meadows Park down in Royal Bay. We increased our annual flower planting and our hanging baskets, and started to replace a lot of the trees that were where we saw trees in the parks that were struggling and dying off, we were able to start replanting those. And along with the wayfinding grant that Colwood was successful in, that's going to bring 8 new benches, 4 new recycling cans, and 4 more new dog stations, which are the dog bag stations. Those are some of our successes for this year. Challenges this year, like many, we struggled with staffing. We were a little bit late to the party when it came to getting our seasonals and our auxiliaries. Keeping auxiliary staff with good skill sets and losing them to full-time positions and seasonal positions and other things was tough for us to keep the staff. Just as a side note, 2 years ago, I put out a posting and had well over 100 applicants, and this year, we were getting in the neighborhood of 10 to 20 applicants, which was really quite a drop off. Our aging playground equipment, we are seeing a lot of the pieces breaking down in our playgrounds. With some of our playgrounds old enough that we're unable to replace a lot of those pieces, those parts and pieces, as well as our new Kinsel playground. We've had some growing pains with that, but we're making it through that. But that was a challenge this year. Over the past few years, we've definitely seen a rise in park usage, but we've also seen quite a lot of parks being used now for events, fitness activities, daycares, and birthday parties and that sort of thing. Quite the increase for us than what we're used to. And then water regulations for us is becoming very apparent that people are starting to realize that we actually abide by the CRD regulations, where we're only allowed to water twice a week. It is hard to keep grass green at twice a week. So for us, we do our best. The plants and trees are good, but grass is one of those things that brown is the new gold. So, and those were our challenges and opportunities.
Thanks very much, Gord. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I wanted to ask how you managed to transition to the 7-day operation and how that went.
A lot of sweet talking, for sure. No, I mean, we brought it to the membership. In today, it's a lot of work-life balance, and we presented it as an opportunity to work different hours and having different days off, and it worked out really well. And we were a little worried and when we presented it, but now I asked one of the members if they would like to go back to a regular 5-day Monday to Friday, and they were actually quite happy with their weekend work. So it was really just presenting that as an opportunity for our membership to work different hours, and that really did actually work out very well.
Great. And I know we talked about it a few years back, but I know that youth are particularly using our parks. I see them out there all the time. So I wondered if we've considered doing some sort of mentoring or other ways to draw people in who might become our seasonal employees for the summer, or that sort of thing, as a way to we could reach out to, like, our village initiative, which has just got underway, that we would be able to bring some of our youth in and say, do a ride along, see what we do, and then maybe you'd like to apply for a partnership or training. I can't think of what the right word for that is, but a way that we could draw people in to show them what the work is, and what we're looking for in people so that they could get a chance to be invested in pursuing a career in somewhere like Public Works.
Great idea. We did actually apply for student grants for student workers for this past year. We were unsuccessful, unfortunately, but we'll try again.
Okay, thanks very much. Councillor Ward?
Yeah, hey Gord, sorry, really quickly, just curious, it's not listed in here. Did you experience any challenges with some of the new terrain that was added? And I'm thinking specifically like the western slope behind Royal Bay High School. And I only ask them kind of look into the future with what's coming, you know, along with Chosen Road and things like that, if that's required new ways of doing things, et cetera.
It's been a long learning curve with that slope for what it was envisioned to be into what it is now. We've done a lot of work there, a lot of invasive clearing there. And so that's where with the Gablecraft side of Machosen Road, and now with the Royal Beach side of Machosen Road, you know, we're working really closely and making sure that the developers know that, you know, there are a lot of challenges, and that, you know, having the vision of having a nice, beautiful meadow, you know, is sometimes unattainable, and that we just need to kind of scale it back to what it is. And it's, you know, it's a meadow, but it might not be a beautiful Gary Oak thriving ecosystem. You know, we just, but there are definitely challenges for that. It's, we were able to get in a machine this year for the very first time behind Royal Bay. Our roadside mower actually got right into the whole area and was able to cut the whole thing down. I think that's something we're going to move towards using. We haven't been able to get a machine in there before, and he was actually had the machine to do it. So it's something we're going to move for with that as well.
Okay,
and that will help invasives as well.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Gord, I just want to congratulate you, because I think that was really big when you got that 7-day operation, because I noticed the difference. I personally noticed the difference. So I think that's big. So congratulations. Just a quick question on this. Have we ever approached the Rotary Club or any service club about playground equipment?
We have actually in discussion with Rotary right now for Ocean View Park.
Okay, super, thank you. Councillor Jensen?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I would like to echo the mayor had to say. I think that we've made some great gains in your department in the last couple of years. And near and dear to my heart, I'm passionate about garbage cans and garbage collection. Warms my heart. Now, when you say a standardized, were you talking about a standardized receptacle across the community then?
Yes.
Okay. And because I do notice, I hate to say it, but sometimes those little dinky ones that hang on a post, like I just wonder if we can do better in the sense that they fill up quite quickly.
We're limited with those ones. Those are definitely, you know, area specific. It is the larger cans though that we've done, and we've actually we've worked with the communications department, and we have actually quite a nice garbage can that we bring in the shell of it, and then we source local cedar, and we do it in house, and we whitewash it, and it's quite a nice marine type looking. If you might, there's a couple of them out right now. There's one up at Outlook. We put a new one up there. There's a new one just at the new garden area at Machosen, the end of Machosen and Sioux Road. There's one in there. So, and we'll be putting them all out where our cans age out and we change them. We'll be starting to put in these new garbage cans.
Thanks.
They look really good.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moving on then to 2022 priorities, where we've landed, and draft for 23.
So our 2022 priorities were to create an urban forest management plan, which we're at the end of our phase 1 and working on that draft plan, and hoping to bring an update to council in the near future on that, and working into phase 2. increase the service to parks and trails, address invasive species in parks, which we do on a regular basis. It's an ongoing thing that we're working both with stewardship groups, encouraging more stewardship groups. Friends of Havenwood are standard here, and we're just trying to get more like-minded people out there. Create an action program for the recent Parks and Recreation Master Plan, which is ongoing as well with our individual park maintenance plans. And that's kind of where we're starting to implement those as they come up. Data tracking is a big one for us. We're really trying to get the data so that we can bring that here and keep you more informed and inform our budget better, and improve the drainage throughout Latoria Creek and Ocean View Park trail systems. We've done a lot of work. Ocean View, we did quite a bit of work to help the drainage there, and then Latoria Creek, we were able to pretty much correct the problems we were having there. And what we've done is, especially from Latoria Creek, we're now using a lot of the stuff we learned there over at Havenwood, and a lot of those washouts that we're getting in those trails is we're able to prevent a lot of that from happening. Our 2023 priorities is to continue the urban forest management plan and get that finished. Create an invasive species management plan, which I'm working on now with a couple of outside consultants. Create an action plan, same as the keep doing action plans as the parks maintenance plans come up. Utilize the staff knowledge for trail drainage and design for future projects, which we're, as I just said, when that is, we're using a lot of what we learned with Latoria Creek throughout the rest, and as well as new projects come on, it's better informing us to have a better idea of when projects come in and they have a sloped area or a trail, and we're going to know that could, we could have problems and challenges in the future with drainage or with trail washouts or that sort of thing. The continuation of data tracking, it's a major priority for us. Trail stair maintenance was another major priority for us. Our stairs are starting to, as we did a great project a couple years back for Latoria Creek, and a lot of our stairs are starting to age out now. So it's a big job for us to go through and start changing out a lot of the stairs. And as we get parks like Meadow Park Green, where we're seeing large turf areas, it's a new thing for our department. We don't have a lot of large turf areas. So this is one thing where we're working on, education, bringing in experienced staff, partnering with some staff from Wanda Fuca that work with sports fields and that sort of thing, is to expand our knowledge and increase our experience with these larger turf areas. They're a whole different ball game compared to a boulevard, for sure. And that's our priorities for 2023.
Okay. Any comments? Councillor Day.
Just the same. I'm stuck on the trying to increase the metrics for accessibility. So I do know that there are some plans to do accessible trails in both Colwood and Creek Park, not Colwood Creek Park, Latoria Creek Park, Heather Creek Park, and Havenwood. So just if we could add into the priorities to include those metrics as they get done.
Okay. Seeing none others, over to you, Jen.
Thank you. So just moving along to page 7. Last couple of years, we have enhanced and increased the washroom maintenance, both of the city's washroom facilities as well as temporary washroom facilities throughout city parks. With the proposed draft 23 budget, we are proposing that we revert back to pre-pandemic washroom maintenance levels. And so you will see that washroom maintenance budget drop back down to pre-pandemic levels, and we are no longer utilizing grant funding for this area. As you've heard from the team in recent years, I believe starting in 21, we increased the level of service, both in parks and in trails. The financial implications of introducing an irrigation technician, we've got the full year implications of that with the 23 budget. So there is somewhat of a lift there. We also, as an organization, recognize that as the city continues to grow and develop and we inherit additional parks infrastructure to maintain, that ultimately that will increase our team. We do need to account for additional FTE estimates. And so in this area, we have accounted for a 0.5 FTE in each of the future years to support ongoing maintenance works in particular. And as we review what we inherit, because it's not just parks, but also sidewalks, those estimates will be refined. So specifically right now, we do believe that the 0.5 FTE, it's accounted for within the parks service area, but we also are expecting that some of that servicing will support sidewalk maintenance, for example. West Shore Parks and Recreation, you will hear from that team directly during budget deliberations, but the city, as you know, we are a member of the West Shore Parks and Rec Society. Their draft requisition for 2023 has increased 5%. That draft requisition is proportionately allocated based on assessment valuation only. As a result, our share increased a little over 6%. So that is driving some of the increase in this area. Overall, when you look at the operating budget, what was approved for 23 versus what is before you tonight, previous service review did direct a further increase in maintenance in the area of parks and trails. This draft budget proposes that we continue to maintain the existing service area, and that's the primary reason for that drop in the operating budget there. Please answer any questions, or with that, that's the overview of the parks and trails operating budget.
I've got a quick question. So I saw a request already for, I believe parks maintenance. St. John the Baptist Church is maintained with park maintenance. So there was a request for, I think there's 2 lawn cuttings a year for it. And so the request was for another 2. Is that reflected in this budget? So they wanted 4 total. Do you know offhand, Jen?
I would have to defer to the team. I do know that this request came in somewhat recently, since when we initially prepared these estimates.
Oh, is it? Okay.
It's on the outside.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the clarification. Councillor Day?
You've just asked what I was asking, so.
Oh, okay.
We'll review the draft budget estimates with the team and ensure that we do have sufficient funding, and we'll highlight if there's any increase overall when we return with this budget during budget deliberations.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Grove?
So we're talking about Pioneer Cemetery. While campaigning, someone told me they cut the grass less because there's a very rare species of flower. And I don't mean to jump on anything, except I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that flower is in there and it's very rare. And I didn't know if there's any truth to that comment I received from a resident who lived right next door to that cemetery. But anyway, thought I'd throw that out there. Yeah.
Go ahead, Gord.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's the balsam root that was found in there. And we are, as a department, learning about how to cultivate that and get it going. We aren't cutting it any less than what we would normally do. We have over the years we've treated the Pioneer Cemetery as a Gary Oak meadow. So There are definitely options for us to go in there and increase cutting in certain areas, and then to help, access the grade markers, as well as, come in with pathways, and we can also increase the cutting as well. It's just really how we want that meadow to look. I believe that there's enough maintenance in the St. John's that we will be able to come back with a plan for increased maintenance if that's needed. The Balsam route is definitely on our radar, and we're going to make sure that we cultivate it to the best of our ability, for sure.
Super, thank you. Seeing nothing else, so back to Mr. Earl.
Thank you, Your Worship. So at this point, administration are recommending that the proposed service level for parks, trails, and recreation be maintained. We're looking for that affirmation.
Okay. Councillor Jensen moves it, second by Councillor Grove. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Move on.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just checking in, is now a good time for a break? Or
Yes, I was going to say that right now. Perfect. Just 3 minutes. No.
I'm motioning towards the Your worship.
Mr.
may I-
Earl,
Thank
over
you.
to you, sir.
The next area for discussion this evening is boulevards. Colwood staff maintain approximately 17,600 square meters of developed boulevards and boulevard islands that feature garden beds, manicured lawns, maintained at level 2 groomed as defined in the appendix to this document. There's approximately 11,100 meters squared of garden and 6,500 meters squared of lawn. Irrigation is a significant part of boulevard maintenance, especially given the complexity and size of recent installations at Royal Bay. 90% of these boulevards are irrigated and have ornamental street lighting. There's also 60 garden beds in cul-de-sacs throughout the city that are maintained at level 6, which we call service and industrial. While the city maintains all boulevard gardens, mowing is performed by city staff or property owners, depending on the location, as defined in Appendix 3. In addition, Colwood has over 26 kilometers of undeveloped boulevard with grass or brush requiring seasonal mowing. This mowing is done by a roadside mower twice per year. Typically, these boulevards are part of Colwood's critical drainage network. Expectations in this area that differential levels of boulevard maintenance occur depending on location, that a manicured appearance be maintained along select Colwood boulevards as defined in Appendix 3, that beautification through annual plantings be implemented in select locations. Currently, annual plantings are installed along presentation boulevards such as Island Highway and Whale Road, with the remaining plants dispersed where appropriate, that boulevard amenities foster a sense of pride for residents, and that staff manage the city's urban forest and guide future maintenance through the creation of an urban forest master plan. Those are your expectations, and we are seeking edits or additions.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ward.
Yeah, I think in terms of the expectations, the one piece that I suggest may be missing, and I use may, because again, I defer to the expert here, but is there any thought given to balancing, I think, the beautification with, adaptation and, climate being the buzzword, but also just in terms of indigenous plantings, things that might require less water, less pesticides, things like that. Again, I always come back to the dollars and cents, like would it be more cost effective as well, still maintaining an aesthetic, but, maybe saving a few bucks on hardier plants that are going to withstand some of the temperature variations and things like that. So in that holistic view, is that logical or am I reaching here?
I think you'll see it in one of our priorities is that we use native species as much as possible. Where we don't, it's annual plantings, there's not a lot we can do with as far as flowers are concerned, but definitely and in the new garden bed that we had at the end of Machosen there that is brand new to us. We did a mixture of annual flowers as well as native species and rhodos and that sort of thing that'll do better in that area and still give color and beautification. So we do wherever we plant, we use native species and hardier plants, and then where annuals are, unfortunately, that is just we're limited as the kinds of annuals we could use for those areas.
Right.
But we will add that as an expectation.
Yeah, because I think I don't want to beat the subject to death. It's just as beautiful as annuals are and everything else. There are some some indigenous plants that sit there year round. That you see them in traffic circles and other things that still maintain a certain level of aesthetic, but maybe don't require and even the same volume of work. But yeah, if we add that in just as a thought, that's great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Councillor Day.
Thank you. I'm just curious, like in your budgets for boulevards, what % of your budget is for the materials, like the plants themselves versus the labor to put them in? Because I think it's easy for us to go down the rabbit hole and tell you what kind of plants to put in, but probably I'm guessing that the labor is way more a big part of it. So the things that are easier to look after would actually cost the city less than the ones that are, harder to prune or spread more vigorously or whatever the different issues are. My own garden included, some things do well in some places and sometimes they don't. And you don't really always know that up front. So you probably have some history with different areas where hey, that just didn't work there. So next year we're going to do this. And so I just would like to find a way for us to capture that knowledge that you have from working with those boulevards so that when people ask us, well, why isn't it native plantings or why isn't it, why did you plant that? That we have information about why we made those choices and it's kind of baked into our plans because someday, believe it or not, you will retire and somebody else who comes in may not know what all this stuff that So if we somehow capture that in our metrics, then that's going to be a double win.
Okay, I guess I get to say what I was going to say before. I knew those boulevards too. So I guess my thinking is a little different here on this. And I'm sure I'm going to get beaten up here. But I always get concerned about, we have our people out on those main roads like Island Highway, Whale Road, which is a collector on Island Highway, which is an arterial road. And I'm always worried about the safety because I watch some people just boom by our employees. And it really concerns me. Like I'm going, Jesus, I feel like going out there and stopping traffic myself. So I guess the way I was looking at this, I know that we use annuals, we do those beds, and I mean, it's just beautiful and everything. We get to enjoy it, but to the risk of our employees. That's how I feel about it. I just feel so uncomfortable by it that I was wondering if there was something else that we can plant so that's sort of low maintenance and, so maybe our people don't have to go in there so often. I don't know if I'm explaining this correctly, but it's a big safety issue to me because it's crazy out on the Island Highway. But so I don't know. I'm just throwing this at you and maybe you just think I'm crazy and that's the cost of doing business, but I don't think it has to be. But so I just asked a question.
Through the chair, I just want to make the comment. People always talk about the safety of the workers in working under safe conditions. It may not be the most comfortable for most people to be in the middle of a road, but they are working under safe conditions. We implement the traffic control plans and everything else. Yes, people will try and speed by. We try and squeeze them down. You get calls for slowing people down. But I want to make sure that everybody is clear that when we're working in the middle of the road, it is safe. It doesn't seem to go that way with parks people or people that are thinking of green spaces, but we also have road crews and sewer crews and everybody else, and we're working in the middle of the road all the time. So I just wanted to clarify that, yes, it's a safety concern. People look at it that way, but we implement all the safety protocols that we can.
Okay, yeah, and by no means am I trying to imply that we are not being safe because I see the precautions that everyone does take. It's phenomenal. It's just drivers just nuts. I get mad because there are people, right? So anyways, but that just goes along with another theme that I have is, instead of, I'm sure you guys are the experts at this, but is there something else that we could do to, to have lower maintenance plants that, that don't require our care so much and number two, that lower maintenance and just that look good. I don't know if there's such a thing. Less water, because water is going to be as precious as gold in the future. I'm trying to look forward to the future right now. Because I noticed that we take around that watering truck. I never saw that until I was up in Royal Bay, and I went, what the heck is that? And it was a truck. We were out there watering, you know, the water beds at the entrance. I've never seen that. That's the first time, you know, just walking up. Oh, I didn't know that we had this. But is there such a thing that we can do? Is it cost prohibitive, or you know, why aren't we? I guess, and I'm not saying I want us to look like Arizona, which uses zero escape everywhere, right? But there's got to be something similar that we can use in our temperate climate, you know, that is low maintenance. I don't know. Just posing the question.
Definitely. I mean, we can do anything when it comes to the gardens for sure. And then that's like using native species and having more of a native plant garden instead of like an annual garden. We have done in the past, we've done bulbs, which are, you know, we don't really have to do much with. You cut them down once they're done. They come up year after year. We actually still have some of our bulbs that come up on Whale Road. The one thing is with these garden beds, you know, plant material and watering, and we can reduce all of that. It's getting out there and cleaning them up and getting rid of the weeds and that sort of thing. So if we're planting stuff, yeah, we can reduce our time out there. And if you know, if you want us to explore, you know, different options for pageantry instead of annuals, that's something we can do. But we're still gonna have to be out there to make sure the beds are clean. It's not so much, you know, for annuals. Once they're planted, we don't really do much. We're, you know, when we're there, we're pinching back the annuals, that sort of thing. It's really getting rid of the weeds and weeding the beds and that sort of thing. That's, you know, that's where the majority of that time is. Once we plant them, you know, we spend a couple of weeks planting. The rest of the time, it's just maintaining the beds for weeds and that sort of thing.
Okay, thank you.
Your worship, if I may, we will capture an additional expectation that planting medians is done with safety in mind. The second current council expectation is intended to limit the amount of manicured boulevards that we have. And so the appendix 3 is how we define where we go with the manicured approach and where we don't.
Okay.
So council, notwithstanding, I've also captured and we'll add to the draft priorities that we bring options instead of annuals for planting beds. But notwithstanding that, the reduction of areas that are manicured is another methodology to reduce maintenance costs.
Okay, thank you very much. No other question. Oh, Councillor Day one. Okay, Councillor Day.
So unfortunately, appendix 3 on our agenda here, I guess it's a big map. So it came through quite blurry and really can't give you any feedback based on the way the appendix looks on my iPad here. It's, I can't tell anything from that as to what is manicured and what isn't. So I couldn't make any suggestions as to whether that's should be more or should be less, but
administration will email out a version of appendix 3 and the other map-based appendices if there are that are scalable. This one is not scalable, and that's probably causing the problem.
Okay, great.
Thank you very much. Please proceed.
Thank you, Your Worship. We've got staff position history and forecast through to the end of 23, similar in 23 to 22. We've got kilometers of boulevard maintained, kilometers of boulevard gardens maintained, number of annuals planted, kilometer of boulevard urban forest maintained, trees planted, and hanging baskets maintained as our current metrics. And from there, I'll turn it to the team to talk about successes, challenges, and opportunities.
Thank you. So successes for our Boulevards team this year was in the pageantry, was a big one for us. We did significantly increase our pageantry this year with annuals. We also were part of the once again, part of the grant process that saw where we're going to get new park benches, which also are part of our streetscape benches, garbage cans, and dog waste stations. And part of that as well, the team transitioning to that 7-day-a-week operation is the garbage cleanup, litter cleanup, and that sort of thing in our boulevards is also part of that. And we increased our irrigation team as well. So we gave Pete a helper, a much needed helper out there. Challenges and opportunities for 2023 or 2022 was it's as well as parks we get boulevards almost quicker than we get parks, and we're at the time of this was down at Royal Bay, we're seeing another close to 1,200 meters square of boulevards that we're going to be having to look after in no time here. So just keeping pace with that, there's a lot of boulevards coming on. Irrigation continues to be a challenge for us, not just in the trying to keep up and keep things watered, but in new construction zones, Royal Bay being one of them. One of the chief, one thing that keeps our irrigation team busier than they should be is fixing breaks where construction vehicles have driven over them. The developer Gablecraft has been, great and a good support for us when they have the ability to control some of the construction and do the fixes and that sort of thing. But once the boulevards definitely get turned over to us, there are boulevards, and we're still, they're still within construction areas, and we still see a lot of breakage because of that. And our climate has really had an effect on our grass, which bounces back quite well. But street trees and gardens and lawns have just really been affected by this drought, and keeping ourselves accountable to water restrictions really plays it's a tough go for our plants and trees out there. We in our planting ourselves, like I said, one of our priorities is to always use native species. They are a lot hardier because they're from this area. But even with that, we're seeing even native species and native trees struggle through these last few years and so it's been quite a challenge to keep everything healthy and vibrant. And those are our challenges and opportunities.
Any comments from council? Is it possible, do you need direction for something like this? But so what, in the latter part of the summer you let the lawns go brown, so what? Like, to me, so what?
So what to me too.
Oh, okay. that's how I feel. No, honestly, because I think the attitudes are definitely changing out there when it comes to grass. A lot of people are just letting their grass go brown. It just makes a lot of sense. Where there's not a lot of foot traffic, grass will come back. It's not going anywhere. It will die off, and as long as there isn't foot traffic over top of it, that's where we'll get the damage. But grass will definitely come back on boulevards. I think our irrigation lead unfortunately couldn't be here tonight, but really wanted to be here tonight because he's very passionate about reducing the amount of water that we use on boulevards. And I think attitudes are changing, but there's still a lot of people there that want to see a green lawn. So yeah, I agree. I mean, I think by default on where I live, anyways, on Beasanton, they have a brown grass policy because we get to see it green in the spring and then it's brown. And it doesn't bother any one of us. We just go, good. It's less water we have to use. So that's our attitude.
Your worship, if I may,
Yes, please.
it would be very helpful for staff to receive direction from council to return with options to reduce, further limit, or stop watering some boulevards.
That's exactly where I was going with this. I think it's a smart thing to do. So. Okay. I'll just take it around and then we'll make a motion on, or we could just do direction. Councillor Day, go ahead, please.
You could come back to me because we're
Okay.
kind of on the grassy boulevards. But I do wonder, I guess it's a struggle everywhere. I have nothing against brown lawns. I do not water my lawn, period. I water my garden beds so that things will survive, but I don't water my lawn. But I'm just very lucky where I live. It stays fairly green, except for last year. But they're not dead, they're dormant when your grass goes brown. And like you say, if it doesn't have too much foot traffic, it's coming back. But what about different plantings? So I used to think, well, the idea was a great idea to like completely cover like medians and things, because who wants to be out there mowing anyways? But none of those are successful. Like even the turf ones in Langford still have things sprout up in them. So, and I don't need any more plastic in the world. Thank you very much. But at the same time, perhaps some slow growing shrubs that are low and not going to impede sightlines and things would be better than grass in some areas. And that might be something that we could do some trials of, so that we could come back with a recommendation when developers come forward with their plan and we say, and by the way, we'd like you to plant these shrubs instead of grass because they're drought tolerant, they're going to look good, they're going to be lower maintenance, and they're going to crowd out other things that would try to be growing there. So just an option for us to consider going forward is to move away from those traditional grass boulevards and towards some plantings with some maybe stepping areas, because I know a lot of our boulevards are areas where you need to be able to step out onto. It's a thought.
Thanks a lot. Councillor Jensen.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Briefly, I have been cornered by Pete Thompson at the side of the road and got an earful. So this does resonate with our staff members. And I think it's within your guys' purview and knowledge to come back and tell us where we can cut back in our water use, where we can cut back and get away from sprinklers. But it's right in our policies as far as Boulevard being turned over to the city, what the expectation is. So do we need to alter that expectation along the lines of what Councillor Day is saying? So they're turning over to us a bunch of sprinklers that need to be maintained, which in turn is a bunch of plantings that need the water. So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I would love to hear feedback from you and your staff and Peter for that matter, where we can dial this back and where it makes sense, because I'd hate to see us lose out on some areas where we've invested time and money and plantings and efforts. But if we can start dialing it back over a number of years and I'll leave that with you. So this, is there a recommendation?
We just have to direction.
Very good.
Mr. Earl knows what to do here. We haven't had to.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Earl. You're satisfied then, right? Okay, perfect. Back over to you then. Do we? Oh.
I think I said I would support your motion.
Oh, I wasn't gonna, okay, I'm just gonna withdraw my motion.
Sorry, I kind of
That's true.
messed that up.
Yeah, I was gonna also.
Thank you, Your Worship. Then moving on to 2022 priorities.
So our Boulevards 2022 priorities echo a lot of the priorities that we've had through the parks, as well as the continue to create the urban forest management plan, create a boulevard beautification plan in coordination with communication staff to showcase Colwood. This is something that we're working with communication right now, and it's actually, you brought it up earlier, Councillor Day, is to have a plan and to have these things in place, so we have something like I say, if I retire and or if our team moves on, people on our team will have these plans in place, and that's something we are working on with communications for that. And determine a boulevard and cul-de-sac island maintenance option, including the provision of supplies to support residents for volunteer maintenance on cul-de-sacs. Priorities for us in 2023, continue the urban forest master plan, install all the new benches and dogway stations and garbage cans that we have. We want to up our game when it comes to trees and beat our record and get 50 new trees in the ground, and improve our irrigation and soil condition, and for all the, so what we're doing for a lot of the beautification and pageantry that we've done is improve the irrigation, go to micro drip where we can, use underground drip as well where we can. So wherever we can increase efficiency, and that's what we're going to do, and that's what we're doing. A lot of our pageantry beds is to do that, and continue to expand our beautification throughout the city, whatever that may look like.
No comments.
With that, we'll have a review of the Boulevard's operating budget. I mentioned earlier tonight, in recent years, we really have been refining the allocation of the labor budgets of the Public Works team. That refinement and reallocation is the primary driver of the Boulevard's operating budget increasing, as you see before you on this document. This operating budget supports the staff that have been providing the existing service in this area in the past year, as is allocated on the staffing summary. There was a comment earlier tonight about getting an understanding of the split between labor and supplies and contracted services. Approximately 80% of this operating budget is that to support the labor resources. The remaining 20% supports the supplies, the plantings, as well as the contracted, so primarily the water usage in this area. Please answer any questions. Lastly, I will mention there does remain funding for urban forestry. Moving into this year, we have rolled that up within maintenance and beautification overall. Thank you.
Councillor Jensen.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Am I reading this right, Jen? Is that a $200,000 increase? 2023 approved budget, 2023 draft budget? Is that kind of
Correct.
what you were referring to there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So in the draft 23 budgets in particular for the Parks and Trails operating area and the Boulevard, there's been a refinement and a reallocation of labor resources. So overall, it's been a reallocation between primarily Parks and Trails and Boulevards. But yes, this is the funding. And so you'll see in the projected actuals, the increase of our draft budget over what actualized this year is not near the 45%. So we've actualized a little over $600,000 to provide the existing level of service. And I will mention Boulevards was another area that I believe in the 21 service review did receive endorsement to increase the level of service, primarily related to beautification. You'll see that in the key statistics, the number of hanging baskets that are now maintained. But yes, overall, there has been a refinement. And so this draft budget does support the resourcing necessary for existing service delivery.
I think I got it. So it's former Councillor Logan's fault and all of his Boulevard improvements. You don't need to answer
Sorry,
that.
the primary difference is, as Ms. Hepting indicated before, it was 21 that we began to pull apart the public works budget, which used to be one budget. Our estimation for how much was spent on trails versus parks and boulevards was inaccurate. And so there's no new staff, but a better reflection of where our existing staff are spending their time.
Thank you.
Yeah, in essence, the way you can look at it, Councillor Jensen, is really, they haven't really increased the number of people, and it's 80% of the cost. So, you know, it's just it's a juggling of people. That's how I figured it out really quickly. So, yeah.
Your worship,
Yes. Oh, go ahead, Councillor Day.
Sorry, did you have something else, Mr. Earl?
I was just, before we moved on, going to draw your attention to Appendix 4, but this can wait until Councillor Day.
I was going to ask about Appendix 4 too. But I was just trying to understand in my head why we've been trying to get more detail in public works. So urban forestry was pulled out and now you're rolling them back in. And I just didn't understand why.
The direct answer to your question is when you look at the allocation of the operating budget, it's a nominal amount related to urban forestry. And that activity has not been directly tracked. So we know
Okay.
that the work is happening, but it really is being recorded within the maintenance works for boulevards in general.
Okay. It would be, I think it's something that it would be beneficial to understand in some way, maybe not specifically in this way, but I think one of the criticisms of Colwood has been that we've lost a great deal of our urban forest, and there's a strong desire, certainly in the community, to try to protect and enhance our natural habitat, urban forest. So I would like to be able to point to some metrics of what we're doing, and maybe I just haven't noticed it yet because it's been a really busy week. But I just thought I'd say that having that line not there, I would appreciate having it somewhere. Maybe if that isn't the right spot, maybe there's a different place that it could go, so that we have something where we can track what we're doing to address the deficit that has been identified in the last 5 years, that we've lost an awful lot of our tree cover in Colwood. And so how are we addressing that? Because that is an impact to our community, and it fits with the difficulties with climate change. And then, yes, I'd like to talk about Appendix 4.
Perhaps I'll have Gord walk us through Appendix 4.
So in previous service reviews, we had discussed the cul-de-sac islands. I think the last service review, we talked a little bit about it. It dates back before my time here, but when I did start here, I believe that there was a program where volunteers from throughout the community worked in those little cul-de-sac beds, and the Parks Department would supply mulch and that sort of thing, and help support those areas, but did not do any kind of gardening or that sort of thing. So now that is kind of gone by the wayside. There's not a lot of that left, if any. I think there's a couple of cul-de-sacs that are still maintained by the communities around them. So what we've done is our current service level is we go in once a year, normally, just as the growing season is starting to really ramp up, and we clean up the cul-de-sacs. We don't do a lot. We get rid of the invasives. We get rid of the weeds. We mulch where needed. There's not a lot of maintenance in these beds. We just kind of clean them up and get them back. So what we've done is provided some options to increase that service level. And I can go through those options right now. Currently, for us, we're about 192 hours, which is a week of a crew and a bit to go through all of the cul-de-sac beds and clean them all up. Option 1 would increase the service level to reflect a level 5, which is still it's only going to give us about 3 visits per year, which would allow us to keep the weeds down. Essentially, you're still going to see they're going to be weedy. We obviously will also look after any health of the plants and that sort of thing, but it would help us care for the plants that are there. Not all of the cul-de-sacs have plants. A lot of these beds are just open, either weedy grass or just even wood chips, or in some cases just dirt that we just go through and clean the weeds out. So that would give us 3 visits per year, and the level 5 service. Vegetation retains a healthy, normal appearance. Invasive plants are controlled. Noxious weeds are eradicated. It will allow us to go out and do 2 follow-ups to our regular cleanup. That increases to a level 5, which is another 228 hours, which is adds another additional $9,000 to the current $8,000 service level. Option 2 would increase to a level 4. What this would do is essentially put these cul-de-sacs on our regular garden maintenance, which is quite a jump in labor. Essentially, we would be there on 14-day intervals. We would every couple of weeks we would be in there. The look of these beds would look much similar to what you see on Latoria Road, on Souk Road, on Whale Road, that sort of thing. That will add about another 580 hours, and at a cost of about $23,000 additional to our $8,000 that we spend right now. Option 3 would be to work with the community, reestablish this volunteer style opportunity. We would work with our stewardship group that we currently work with for help on that. We would probably include the green team with some public engagement and that sort of thing, as well as our communications team. And we would, as a Parks Department, again, support with mulch where plants are needed. If there's some planting that needs to be done, trees, that sort of thing. The cost for this program this would be something we would develop and come up with a cost of what it would cost. I think that we could develop this program with an upfront cost, and then if it's successful, then we would probably be looking at about same service level cost for us as a Parks Department, with quite an increased level of gardening look or aesthetics on these cul-de-sacs. There were some recommendations that where the garden beds are small with very little vegetation, and where the scrub grass, the Parks Department would convert these areas to a hard surface. There are some of these beds that were just, we're talking 35-year-old garden beds that really aren't much of anything, and we could do a hard surface in these areas. there's very little of them, but it's something that we could definitely do there. If the service level is maintained or increased to option 1, the garden bed should be systematically replanted with drought tolerant, low maintenance native trees and shrubs, and the scrub grass areas cleared and reseeded with native meadow seed to reduce the cost. To reduce cost, a 3-year plan doing 20 beds per year to keep the cost close to current hours and material cost to about 3,000 per year. So essentially what this is if we are going to maintain our service level with once a year, that we systematically convert these beds to better deal with the fact that no one's there. We're only there once a year. So drought tolerant plants, meadow grass and meadow type flowers that will grow up, and that the beds look much nicer, when the grass does grow up, and the meadow grass and the meadow flowers. So that would be, if we were to continue the same maintenance we do now, this would be a recommendation that I would recommend for that option. I hope I was clear on all that.
Thanks, Gord. Councillor Jensen?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I love your option number 3. And I do know that some residents reached out to me on how to do something like this over this past growing season, I guess spring, summer, and I think I referred them to you, and you facilitated some kind of effort, but there is some misinformation over the years there, because some of these same residents told me that, they called to say, hey, how, we want to do something with our boulevard, help us out. And it was, oh, no, you can't touch anything. What if somebody falls down and then they sue the city and blah, 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 stuff like that. So I think it's high time that we move in this direction, create some ownership for these places. I mean, these are small garden beds surrounded by, half a dozen homes, presumably. So a little effort on a weekend once or twice a year isn't too much to ask. Now help me out with your next recommendations there as far as your hard surface. I mean, quite frankly, even, I hate to say it, but even in this day and age, the weed gardens are still a net benefit to the environment, as opposed to going to interlocking bricks. I don't know if I could support that as well. But then talk to me about your grass. So we would convert these beds that have shrubs in them already, yard all that out and put grass in there?
No, these are for the scrub grass. So the kind of like just the weedy, essentially there's no grass there. It's just weeds that grow up. So if we were to leave these beds, I would say we could take all of that, start again with a meadow mix type grass. We're using a Gary Oak meadow mix up in Royal Bay and on the hillsides there. And it's actually working quite well for us, and it's a nice looking grass. And then we can also incorporate wildflowers into that as well.
So I think allowing the community to sort of lead the charge on this and creating some ownership of some of these and educating that this program exists. I mean, it might take us a couple of years to get going, but what a great opportunity here for you to show up and dump some dirt and drop a load of plants and give them a little bit of direction on what to do, and then deputize them and send them forth. I think that's great. Thank you. I'm all for option 3, and I'll make that motion, Your Worship.
Okay, can I get a seconder on that? Okay. Oh, sorry, Councillor Ward and Councillor Olson, please.
Well, I just had a question with the small garden beds that don't get a lot of attention. I don't know what the cost of the interlocking brick is, but we're a seaside community, at least that's what we portray. So have we looked at options of doing rock gardens with driftwood? I don't know the rules about taking the driftwood, but there's a lot of it. So it just, to me, makes sense to maybe these gardens just using rock and driftwood and some grasses or something that are low maintenance.
Yeah, I mean, I say hard surface as an example, but we could do any kind of, it's just to get rid of these little areas that just harvest weeds or
Yeah.
cultivate weeds is these small areas where we don't have the soil volume, we don't have any of that. We can convert that to some sort of, and rock or anything like that. We could definitely explore.
I feel like we have a lot of rock and
Yeah.
driftwood, so use it.
Councillor Jordison.
I'm just a little confused. How do you get on this list? Like, I don't have this on our cul-de-sac. So I'm confused as to what kind of garden this is. Are you talking kind of like in the middle of a cul-de-sac is where there's like parking or something, and there's like this circular garden? So why is the city maintaining their street gardens? Like, do it yourself. Sorry, but like I mean, as a city, as a resident, you want to have pride in your own road and doing these things. Like, why are we like, come on. Anyway, I think I would just axe the program and stick with the boulevards. It's not the city's responsibility to go around. And how do you determine, so for instance, on our street, we have at the entrance there's this wonderful big rock pile that's kind of is at the front of a house that kind of goes down a hill, and it has a lot of weeds all the time, and nobody comes and maintains that. So like, how do you differentiate between the different gardens? So anyway, I know I think it says it's an $8,000 right now. I don't see the need for it, but thank you for what you do.
Councillor Day.
So I am supportive of working with residents to get going. Sometimes there's lots of reasons why these areas got left. I could tell you the whole history of how they got there, but you probably don't have that much time. But at least as developers came in and we asked them, what are you doing? They would landscape up this lovely, like the one in the picture, the round little garden bed in the middle of the cul-de-sac. And then they would assume that the residents would look after it. That was their plan. The residents are going to look after these. And then just depends what kind of residents you got. Sometimes the residents were overwhelmed with the property they have and they didn't have time, or maybe they don't like the guy across the street, so they don't want to be out there. There's any number of reasons. But I think that it's still a net benefit. Even a pile of rocks has a net benefit over a paved area. A pile of rocks could have sharp-tailed snakes, could have all kinds of bugs, lizards, things living in it that support the other birds and animals that are in the area. So I do think there is some benefit. I think it could be ever so much better if it also had some native plants and some people to look after it. And if we go with option 3, we could have different levels of service where one has been adopted and one hasn't. That is achievable. And as people get invested, if you look at our community garden out here, there are some people who would dearly love to adopt a plot of land not too far from their home to do some sort of gardening on. And while they may not be here in the next 3 or 5 years, they might be here in 8 years or 10 years, ready to take on that plot. And so long as it hasn't been paved over, it has an opportunity to contribute to the natural environment in Colwood. So I think it's worth investing the time to, some of these areas are probably going to wait for the right person to come along. It won't all happen at once. And it probably is more likely to have a positive outcome for the natural environment if they still exist. So I support option 3.
Thank you. Councillor Grove?
Yeah, thank you. Mayor, I like option 3. I support that. And I also like your second recommendation there with the grasses and so on with where that works. Obviously, there's going to be a variety of solutions that work, and that would be up to your judgment, presumably, and expertise. Wood chips working great in my yard. I think you were there some years ago. They're still doing it, and it still looks great. It's still working. And after 3, 4, 5 years, you scratch back and you've got a garden full of nutrients and organic product. We got the wood chip in the works yard now, right? You just find a place to put it. I think that would work. I don't know how you feel about it, but or the pros and cons of it. There's probably some, but anyway. Option 3 sounds good to me. At least I think it's worth a try.
Okay, I'm gonna call the question then. All those in favor of the motion? All those opposed? Oh, no. Okay, Councillor Olson and Councillor Jordison opposed. So it will be option 3.
I didn't see your hand. Were you opposed?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Your Worship. That brings us to the recommendation that we maintain the level of service in Boulevards.
Okay, can I get a motion to that effect, please, that we maintain? Councillor Jensen, seconder. Councillor Day, all in favor? Opposed? 2. Councillor Jordison and Councillor Olson. Okay, at this point in time, it's enough. It's been a long day. It's a good time to take a break right now. It's roads next and then sewer. So I think we've got the extra time later on to catch up on this. So it's a good time to take a break. I think we're all getting giddy here and making bad decisions. No, I'm just kidding you. And so I'm gonna call an adjournment at this point in time. Thank you very much.
I just wanted to say something.
Oh, sure. Councillor Day.
It's about dates and scheduling.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to point out that we have January 19th is scheduled for service review. And I believe there is an IACTI meeting and a West Shore Parks and Rec meeting. And I think we have 2 later dates if they're needed. So I was just wondering if we could move the items from the 19th to ahead to a different day so that West Shore Parks and Rec wouldn't be missing a rep and neither would IACTI.
Your Worship, if I may.
Yes, please. Yeah, I'm just looking at my calendar.
I was successful last night / this morning in securing Colliers project leaders to attend on the evening of the 19th to provide answers to the questions that came up last night.
Right.
Relative to the police building report. The idea would be at that meeting, council would have opportunity to listen to answers to the questions, ask other questions that materialized relative to those answers or other ones that came to mind. Decision-making on that topic would not occur at that night, but would be rescheduled. Decision-making on the police facility for the 23rd, not the 19th. I could seek to move Colliers, but at this juncture, I've confirmed them for the 19th.
Do you have a time?
6:30 p.m.
Okay, I don't know where that leaves us with West Shore Parks and Rec because I'm not on there, but I think Colliers is important, so I give.
Okay. Councillor Jensen.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a critical conversation. There are a lot of questions around it, and there does seem to be a lot going on. could we at least try to reschedule and deal with this all in one night? Because I feel like if it's on the 19th and then again on the 23rd, we're going to talk about it twice. Which is time I won't ever get back.
Administration intended to separate kind of the answers to the questions
I gotcha.
from the decision to create that opportunity for
So no.
reconsideration.
I can appreciate that, but I just want to make sure that everybody here at the table has the sufficient information that they're comfortable with to make the decision the week after.
I could attempt, that may push into February
Yeah.
if we don't. So is council comfortable with us maintaining the 19th unless we can push to the 23?
I will leave that to you. I think we've made our points as far as West Shore Parks and Rec. It's at
I'm pretty well
5:30.
flexible right now myself personally. I can make it because I've got it in my calendar now, but obviously I'm trying to get as many people at the table because it is so important as I can. So obviously whatever works for, hopefully everyone would be the ideal date for me. So myself personally.
Parks and Rec is at 5:30, so I'll be coming in hot. Usually they don't go that long, but I would suggest I'll be here fairly quickly.
Council Ward.
Yeah, I mean, I've had the 19th marked for obvious reasons for quite some time. And I think personally, I would prefer to hear from Colliers as well as Superintendent Preston if we can in advance of the regularly scheduled council meeting. So have time to digest the information, follow up, ask any other pertinent questions. This is not an insignificant decision. It's $20 million. And I think we owe it to our colleagues across town in Langford and View Royal to make a decision before the end of the month. So I think personally it supersedes some of the other commitments that we have, and I'm not downplaying. They're important as well, but this is the big one in terms of managing taxpayer money. So I'd like to do the 19th and the 23rd if we can.
Okay. Go off those dates for now, Mr. Earl, because yeah, I feel the same way as Council Ward on this one. It's just the big decision for us. So, okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for your patience tonight.